There we are. So now you know more than you ever wanted to know about Maserati Mistral doors. Well, we're back on the silver one. It's been off to have it leather trim and new carpets made, so that's come up lovely. Got to finish those bits off because there's certain bits that the trimmer can't do that I've got to do, like taking the windscreen out and then tucking the trim up behind it and so on. As you know, you've seen me do a windscreen, I'm sure we manage. So that's that. But one of the things, we've got a few little vexing issues with this. One of them is that this door, I don't like the way it fits. It seems to be a bit proud down here. Now, it's nothing, I didn't do any of the remedial work on this or have anything to do with the paintwork. It come in like that. So that's something I'm having to I'm not happy with. So I want to sort that out. So, you know, it's proud there. It's proud there. I don't like that. So we need to try and sort that out. So I've had a look at that. And, you know, pretty simple, isn't it? All we're going to do is we're going to do that and we've got to twist it. So I thought, all we've got to do, you know, we've got to do that. Let's twist the door. Then hopefully that'll sort out, but it doesn't. It springs back. And what I've noticed is we've got these bits in here. We have this bar and that sort of ties across. So the old bar that was in there was in a terrible state, and these adjusters didn't work. They were all seized up and broken, and this was all the wrong shape. So I thought, right, okay, we're gonna have to do something here. So what I've done is I've made a new bar through here that welds onto there, and then I took this apart because this was the wrong shape, so that these will fit nicely, and then re-welded it. So that's all done. So now I can twist the door, and by doing this up, we can get it to hold a bit better. So I'll just get a spanner and we'll do that, and we'll see it in practice what it does. So we'll wind this one up here, and that'll pull on here, and it helps to pull the door in. It seems a bit strange, but it does. You know, it sort of puts tension on it. Now these frames aren't necessarily that strong because it's a steel frame, but with an aluminium skin, so the skin isn't welded to the door by virtue of them being different materials, so it's just sort of clipped over it, which is fine, you know, that's the way they are. So this does seem to pull it quite a lot and does seem to hold it, you know, so that's what I assume that's why they've designed this piece into it. So I'm quite pleased with this, that, you know, the result of what we've got, because it does seem to help. You know, and it's well, it's one of them things, right? So that does help. So that's that. Now I'll just try and twist it again a bit more, and let's see what we got. So yeah, that's a lot better, isn't it? See? So I'm a lot happier with that. So there you go, that's fixed. Simple as that. Well, not quite as simple as that. So I thought what we'd do, we'll have a look at this bar. It was a simple operation to make it, but I had to put a thread on the end of it. So I've had to put this thread on here. And when you're putting long lengths of thread on it, it's difficult to get a nice thread and cut it well, especially on this sort of fine stuff. It's a 1mm pitch, so it's pretty fine. In fact, it might be under 1mm, I can't remember now, but anyway. And then the weird thing is this end's threaded as well. Now it doesn't need to be threaded, but it was, and on the other doors I've looked at and the other one, a lot of them seem to be that way. So what I'm assuming is they had a piece of rod that was threaded both ends that probably did a different job on other cars. Maybe they use these threads, you know, these sort of things on, well, who knows what they used them for. But I actually bothered to put a thread on that end as well, just to, you know, I know he doesn't need it, but it looks right. So again, it's this whole thing of when someone gets in here in the future, it looks like it's been done properly. So that's that. So yeah, that's the plan, that's the plan. So let's have a look at making one of them. And oh, then there you go, look, see all the leather, all the dash. It's beautiful, isn't it? I mean, all right, it's not, you know, I've got an old rag in there to stop me getting dirt on the carpets whilst I'm working on it, but you know, it's starting to get there, isn't it? It's starting to get there. But yeah, that's all right. That'll do, won't it? Lovely. Let's have a look at making something. Right, so that's the rod I took out. You can see where it's threaded here. So this is what I was saying. And there's an equal bit of thread on the other end. So that's it. But what had happened to this is the old nuts, where it had been messed around with that bracket it went onto that I had to change, they had to bend it to try and get it through. And you see they put a bit of weld on the end of that nut there. And then that one's so rusted away, there's nothing there. So this was just loose, it had no tension on it, wasn't doing anything. So of course I couldn't do anything with that. So I cut that bit off, and then I turned up a little piece of metal. So I put a thread on this piece, and I used a hand held tool to cut the thread. Well, that's the original thread. And I cut another one on it down to 4mm. So that's a 5mm. I went down to 4mm. And then did this at 5mm, so that's got a hole in it, and then bolted on. But it didn't. The thread didn't cut very well, so I ended up just putting a blob of MIG on it to hold it. And then this thread wasn't very nice. I wasn't very happy with it. But proofs of concept, I was able to tighten it up on this and make sure it did what it did. But you know, that wasn't. I didn't like that. I wasn't happy with that. So I thought, well, we'll forget that. We'll make a new rod. So that was that. So that's the sort of stock I use, 5mm stock. So yeah, that's comes in at 5mm, and we want to put a 5mm thread on it. So to put a nice thread on something like that, I use this Coventry die. This opens up automatically. So of course that looks too big, doesn't it, for that rod at the minute, if you see what I mean. Look, that's far too big for that, isn't it? Well, that's because it's open at the minute. So what you do is you close it by pushing that across there. You see, so it's now closed it down to size. You can adjust that with this one, and you put various teeth in it, whichever is required. But what happens is when you're running it, when you get it you set the lathe up so that when you get to the end of your travel where you want it, it will sort of pull itself and then release itself. And we will look at it on the lathe in a minute, how it works. If I get a screwdriver, we'll take the plate off, and you'll see the you'll see the little cutting teeth. It's a lovely tool. Another piece that I inherited off of my friend Graham, who sadly passed away many years ago, it was quite a few years ago now, who I got the Myford from as well, the Myford lathe from, and some of my other machinery. So he'd be very proud that I'm making things with this. And I actually had to buy some teeth in for this, and they're quite expensive actually. You know, these cutting teeth are nearly £100 for a set, and these are about £300 for, to buy the die head, as it were. So I was very pleased to have this lot. I wasn't actually given it; I bought it from his estate, effectively. So it wasn't sort of it was a sort of bequest. It went to people that cared about him, but we all sort of bought it, paid for it, and bought it from his estate, as it were. Yeah. Anyway. I won't dwell on all that. So that comes off like that, and then you can see the individual teeth there, and they're all numbered. And you can take them out. If I can get one out, tease one out. You have to put them in situ. So they have a little piece there where it clips into that bit, which is what does the pulls them down in. That's what they sort of twist down in on. That's like a spiral. So yeah, these are nice little pieces. So that's that. That pops in there. If I can get it to go in. Yeah, like that. And then you can see how it sort of clamps down when I clamp it down like that. And then it springs open when you want it to. So that's it. So that's the plan. And you see you change these for different pitches and so on. And you get different sizes of these, and they're great. They're great. And if you set them up with the right sort of tooling, you could have it hollow all the way through, and you can cut great long threads with it. But anyway, I don't want to cut long ones. Okay, we'll set it up in a minute and show you how it works. So here we are on the Myford. We set this up. Now this goes in the taper on the stock here, which is your drill stock, where you'd normally have your put your drill in there and so on. But we fit this in here. Now, because of the way it works, it sort of has to pull itself forwards to then release itself. So I have to bolt effectively like a drawbar into it. So you can't rely just on the taper. So you can, whereas with the drill you're pushing against it, so you can rely on that taper. So what I do is fit that into there like that, and then what we do is we put a drawbar in there, as I say, much like you have on a milling machine. Then put a drawbar in the back here, so that goes into the thread in the back of here, and then we've got a washer here and just a nut to go on it to tighten it up. And then that'll pull it down into the taper, so it'll hold it, so we can do what we want to do. So there we go. So that's our Coventry die setup. It's made by a firm called Alfred Herbert, apparently one of the largest machine tool manufacturers in the world, but there we go. And it's quite old. I don't know how big they are now at it. Right, so that's our stock we're using, 5mm stock. I've put a little lead on it so that it's got something to start the teeth on. You can't butt them in and expect them to start without a tiny lead on them. So this is a nice tool, and we talk about Gordon Murray, don't we? Well, look where this come from. So I wonder if this was used for making the patterns and things for the carbon fibre on the McLaren F1 and things like that, or if it was the Formula 1 stuff, who knows, but it's done some work before it come here. It's quite a nice piece, isn't it? So that's that. So we stick this in the chuck. This is long because this is more than I need for this job. Now the reason we're using something that's longer than we need is because this is just to show how this works. So I don't want to cut a load of stock up and end up, I need the length in it. So this is pretty much as long as you get. I can't get much more in here before it hits the bridge port there. So right, so let's set our stop up. So that's the travel. That's how far the tool travels. So this is our stop. So if we undo this, and if we set our stop to 55mm, we're going to go with 55 because I think that's quite a nice setup. So we put that to 55 there, and then we lock that off. Okay, we lock that off. Now we can move our carriage forwards to our work. So there's our work, and we'll put a bit of oil on it before we start. And if we move our carriage forwards to there, and then lock that off, make sure we've got the shut key out, turn the machine on, and then if we turn our feed on, there we have it, and then we just let this start. There you go, and it will run through its cycle, cutting its thread till it gets to the end, and then when it gets to the end, this will pull apart when it reaches its stop here at this end, and then that will lift open and stop cutting the thread automatically. That's it. And there's our thread, and that's our job done. That's our 55mm of thread. There we are. Perfect. Talked about these before, didn't I, last week, how they're different, how they changed so much, the Maseratis under construction. So we've got two different doors here. Now this is off a very early car. This is a donor for one of the other cars because I want all this window regulator stuff out of it. So this will be for manual windows. The other cars that we're working on all have electric windows, and this is it. So case in point, this strengthening bar, it comes from here. This bracket looks slightly different, but as we follow up through, look where it hits there on this piece here, and this strengthener here is a folded section. Whereas when we come onto this one, which is more like what we were dealing with there, but you see it doesn't have so much of this along here, and this is a big thick piece of plate, much like the other one, going down to there. So that's another little difference. But we were talking about check straps on another sort of when we were looking at it, and some of them have this sort of type that sort of slides into the door, different type of construction to those little ones that we were looking at. So there you go, this is a sort of example of it. So this sort of chrome thing, so it's very, very different treatment for the check strap, very different way of doing it. And that bolts onto the A post, so completely different way of doing things. So as I say, they change things all the time. Now, whether that's off a 3500 or something, we don't know, you know, it's off something else. But yeah, again, it's an example of how things are so different between cars. And then we're looking here, we're looking at our holes with our nice swages in. You know, we've been making things like this before, haven't we? And we go to the other door and we look at that rear edge of it, which is the far side. No swages, completely different. So as I say, so much changes with them, the way they make them. It just is a different way of doing things. And also these doors have got these sort of raised bits on the top here, so for where this trim goes on. We'll have a look at another one in a minute, another door on another car. Doesn't have this upstand, it's flat. So again, you know, all things changing all the time, you know, different things. These quarter lights are a manual with a little clip that goes in here. You lift the little clip and pull them out. All the other cars have this twist knob thing, sort of that works on a sort of gear that then turns them round, which are quite nice, them geared ones, because you twist the gear and then you can actually reverse them almost entirely and then duct air in. So they're quite useful, you know, on a hot day to have that. They're quite a nice thing. The Dino Coupes have a similar thing with this twist wheel. In fact, so similar, it actually is the same mechanism, but they have a different handle on them. So yes, yeah, so it's just a thing, you know, shows how these things cross over between different Italian cars and different manufacturers. And, you know, even as I say, with the Fiat and then the Maserati using the same part. But, you know, that's hardly surprising, is it, that they all use the same thing? Much like these ones use Alfa Giulietta door handles, which also Ferrari used on some of their products. So these door handles here are on a lot of Italian cars, and on the Renault Alpine, French car, they have them, and they've just brought out this new funny little three-wheeled car that has them as well. You know, brand new cars, they're trying to use these on them. So yeah, it's a strange old thing. But there we are, that's the differences of some doors. And we'll go and look at another door in a minute and we'll show you how that's different as well. Right, so as I said, this one's flat across the top here, rather than having that raised section. So it'll have a different trim on it, different window scraper trim. So yeah, that's another thing. Now this is a 66, and this is 3.7. So this is a sort of mid-range, intermediate car in between, I think. So yeah, there we are. And then in the door here, we're looking at our bar again. Similar treatment here, but that's slightly different. Come up to here though, doesn't meet here, meets up here, and then has a little upturn there. So again, a different way of doing it. So this is what we're finding, every single one. So that's every car, slightly different treatment of the doors. You know, so it makes you wonder how many. You know, were there 4 different doors, or is it, you know, just the 4 cars I'm looking at, you know, are 4 different ones, or is every car different slightly? You know, it makes you wonder. But yeah, it shows how bespoke they are and how, you know, they all had their own treatment. It might have been down to the guys that are working on it slightly doing it differently, and I think it's sort of a development. They try different ways of doing things. But yeah, that is telling, isn't it? How you know, this sort of lack of consistency in the way these things are done, which is what you've got to, you know, when you're restoring them, you've got to work with that, and you've got to think, okay, you know, what we're going to do here, how's he going to do it? So you can't say, oh, that's wrong. You can tell this is probably the way it's always been, because it just looks old, doesn't it? It looks like it's always been like that. Whereas that other one I was working on, you could see it had been mucked about with. So I was, you know, having to sort of try and put that right. But I couldn't just copy this one because it's completely different. So I had to work and interpret what we're doing, which is where you know, where it comes in. A bit of knowledge and seeing other ones helps. So yeah, I couldn't look at it and say, oh, that's wrong because it's different than this one. It's not wrong because it's different than this one. It's wrong because someone had mucked about with it, and I had to work that out and then put it right to a sort of position where I felt I was happy with it, which I've done now. So it worked, didn't it? So yeah, a lot of mucking about, but it's important details. There we are. So now you know more than you ever wanted to know about Maserati Mistral doors. And with that, I'll say good night.